Today we're joined by a true legend at Soulful House. Originally from Sheffield, his sound has taken him across the globe with releases on iconic labels such as Defected, Groove Culture and Sulfuric, and support from names such as Kerry Chandler, Sam Divine and Kenny Dope. Known for his killer edits, eclectic DJ sets and deep knowledge of the scene, his tracks have become essentials in DJ sets worldwide. Please welcome to the podcast, Nick Moss, aka Groove Assassin. Nick, how are you doing?
I'm good, thanks, Grace. Yeah, good to be here.
Yeah, good to have you. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you very much. Yeah.
So I saw at the weekend you were playing at the Garage House in London. How was that?
That's right, yeah. It was very good, yeah. It was a 100% vinyl only set.
Right.
So, yeah.
How often do you do those?
You know, it's only the second vinyl only set that I've done this year. So, but before that, I'd probably not played a vinyl only set for probably 5 or 6 years.
Really?
Yeah. Not many venues that kind of cater for that, really, for my kind of sound.
Do you enjoy them compared to a digital set?
Yeah, I think, as you said earlier, kind of thing, it was easier to get organised with a vinyl, kind of looking at the covers so you can see, remind me what I'm kind of playing instead of having a USB stick where I'm just kind of scrolling through just endless track titles, really.
Yeah, it's a very different workflow, isn't it?
Totally.
Yeah, so we'll get into that in a little bit about sort of how you organise your music and prep for your sets.
Sure.
But before we get into that, it would be great to hear from you what you do for work in your own words.
Sure, yeah. So DJ, producer, remixer, probably more remixer than producer over the years. I'm probably more DJ trying to be a producer, really. Kind of know where I want to get to and where I want to get to with my sound, but it's just always been a learning curve of kind of how to get that finished sound, really. It
would be great to go right back to the start of your journey. You grew up in Sheffield.
That's
what
right.
was life like growing up? What were your early interests? Was music always a big thing in your life? Tell me a little bit about that.
Yeah, from kind of an early age, I was kind of influenced by my cousin, really. He was a couple of years older than me. I can remember going around to his house, probably about 11, 12, and he had this double turntable thing with a mixer in the middle. And he already had like probably his parents' records, my uncle and auntie's records, and some records he bought himself. So just used to spend afternoons around there, really, just messing about on these decks. And I just thought, I've got to get into this. Go back and go through my parents' record collection. I mean, they were into like pop music and might have like best of disco album, something like that, knocking about. But no, and from there, I think it was an age where we kind of old enough to kind of go into town on the bus and go and hang out. And he'd take me down to the record store there, started picking up some records myself, and then hanging out down the local amusement arcade, which was kind of full of people from all different backgrounds, really. It was quite a street. It was kind of like a local breakdance crew that used to kind of frequent there. So there was people passing mixtapes about. It was like a lot of like local graffiti artists. It was kind of a hub for kind of street kind of music and stuff. So kind of evolved from there, really, just by kind of being kind of part of that and around that kind of those situations.
So was there a lot of hip hop influences there? I'm interested to know how you got into that soulful house sound that you're known for. Was that something that happened during that time when you were first getting into it, or was it a different genre back then?
Yeah, probably. There was a lot of people were passing kind of mixtapes about in the arcade back then. It was all like cassette tape. And I think because of the breakdance crew that were going through there, one of the guys worked there. He was more into kind of electro breakdance, but kind of became friendly with him. He was about 5 or 6 years older than me. We used to kind of go around his house on a Sunday afternoon. His uncles would come round. One of them was like a disco DJ. The other one was a hip hop DJ. So it was a bit of a melting pot of kind of different sounds, really. So, and I was really into the kind of disco sound. I don't know, something just clicked with that kind of 70s, kind of 80s, kind of that kind of sound, really. So
you can hear that in your music, that influence, definitely. Really? Yeah, I definitely think so, 100%. So you talk about how your love for DJing sort of came about in this communal setting with people handing out mixtapes and with your cousin and things like that. Did you have any of your own equipment before you started gigging?
I did, yeah. So, yeah, a couple of years after, when I'd been around to my cousins, I think just pestered my parents to death to say, look, I've got to get something like that. So I can remember buying this it was the same kind of a double kind of, I think it was made by Cloud Electronics, which was a Sheffield company back then. And it was just 2 belt drive turntables with like a little mixer in the middle. And yeah, it was all, I think it had a little tiny pitch control on it. So it was hard to mix. But it was enough. When I was at school, I was kind of going to, there was a record shop up the road and was buying any from De La Soul to early hip house, Foley, Jackmaster Funk, anything really. And then, yeah, I think it was my 17th birthday. Managed to save up a bit of money. Parents put some money towards and got some Technics, which I've still got now.
Wow.
So, yeah.
Yeah. Well, I think it's great that you learnt on something so basic before that, because I guess if you can play on what you had to begin with, you can play on anything. I mean, like the 3000s and the up-to-date mixers now are like...
That's right, yeah. I remember going to do the pirate radio show. We had a pirate radio show and they couldn't afford Technics at the time, so it was always turn up there and you've got to play on these belt drives and there's matchsticks on the pitch controls and stuff. So yeah, if you certainly if you can play on anything, then yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And how did that sort of lead into you getting booked for your first gig? Can you remember what your first gig was?
Yeah, you know what? I think I had a couple of local gigs. I think it was just friends' parties and stuff like that at first, really. You know, it was a bit of a laugh, kind of birthday parties and stuff, and didn't really see myself as a DJ. It wasn't really a thing to be doing back then, if you know what I mean. It wasn't. It was just kind of getting popular.
Right.
I'd go out. We used to go to a place called Quadrant Park in Liverpool. I think I was sneaking in there when I was like 16. Used to get in the Hacienda when I was 16, 17. So I can remember going to Ibiza for the first time on my 16th birthday in July. And I went with some friends that were older and they persuaded my parents to say, look, he's going to be all right with us. We'll let him come along kind of thing. And went to some of the big clubs. I remember being in Amnesia and Space and places like that and just like, wow, this is this next level kind of thing. Not seen anything like this before. And then I can remember going back the following year. But before I went back, there was a friend of mine who was working across the road from a club called Summon, which was around San Antonio Bay. Now, it was one of the only clubs that had an English promoter at the time. It was Es Paradis, which was black and white promotions, and Summon, which was Balearica, which was some guys from London, 2 guys. Anyway, my friend was working across the road at a Chinese restaurant, asking people to come in for a meal. And he'd befriended these guys at the club. And he said, oh, my friend's a DJ. He's going to come across in a couple of weeks. Can he get a spot? So they said, well, tell him to bring his records with him and we'll kind of try him out. So I can remember going and I think Danny Rampling was playing one night. And he said, right, bring your records tonight. Danny Rampling's playing, but we've got an after party on at this other club further around the bay called, I think it was called Prisma. Started at 6 a.m. So like buzzing, all my mates are there and said, we're going to this after party. And I can remember getting there. I think the first DJ was James Lavelle from like Mo Wax, acid jazz fame. And then he said, right, you're up. Must have gone on there about 8:30 a.m. Did this set, went to find the promoter. He's fast asleep at the bar. But then he said, he said, come back and see me in a week kind of thing. Went back to see him and he said, amazing set. We want you to come back and can you be a resident for the summer on Tuesday and Thursday nights? So I ended up going back home, picking some more records up and going back for the season. But
17?
Yeah.
That's like properly throwing you in the deep end with your DJ career, like that being one of your first proper gigs.
I mean, it was just by luck, really. It was by chance that my friend had met these guys, and it was just timing, really. So I ended up, one of the guys who was running the club was going out with the manageress of the Hacienda at the time, so we kind of became friendly with her. And even though I wasn't old enough to get in the Hacienda, she'd let us in there when we came back and stuff. I never got a gig there, but I was at Summon playing Danny Rampling, Nicky Holloway, Sasha, all these big names that I was like, wow, it's incredible to be playing with these guys. So.
I mean, hearing that, a lot of people would think that's too daunting to go straight into these kind of situations, like when you're first starting out as a DJ. Was there any times where it didn't quite go to plan when you were first starting out, but you know, fixed it worked out in the end?
Well, yeah, I think obviously it was the season I was there. They had this, it was like a charity fundraiser for someone that was terminally ill. and all the DJs that were on the island at that time were asked to come along, obviously play for free. I think it was a daytime party, but it was inside the club. And I think everybody had an hour, I think, to play, obviously vinyl. And I was playing after Alex Pre and Brandon Block. So obviously really nervous because everybody in there is a DJ. And I used to do this mix with Michael Jackson, Don't Stop Till You Get Enough, mixed with Degrees of Motion, Do You Want It Right Now? But it was the instrumental dub thing. So I'd start off with this dub, and I'd done it that many times that I'd count the bars, so I'd know when to drop the Michael Jackson in.
I see.
So, and it kind of fit perfect. It was kind of just this perfect blend. You'd have to kind of mess about with the pitch on the record a bit to keep it in time, but it kind of worked. So I pulled off this mix, and I was like, wow, look, kind of, I was clapping and saying, oh, who's this guy, kind of thing. And then the second to last record, I can remember mixed it in, and I'd lifted the needle off the wrong record. Obviously, the silence in the club, everyone looked up like, what the fuck's going on? And,
your fault.
Yeah, I just had to drop it back down. And yeah, but you know what, everybody kind of loved it and cheered. But yeah, it was quite daunting at the time, thinking, oh my God, just what have I done?
Yeah, it probably felt like you wanted the ground to swallow you up in that moment, but it sounds like you fixed it. Fixed it quickly. It sounds like it did kick off really quickly for you at the start of your career. But was there a moment where you thought, wow, like this could actually go somewhere special? I can make a career out of this rather than, you know, something I do for a little bit of extra money or a hobby? Was there one particular moment where...
You know what, I think it could have done, but I think I was that kind of set in my ways to what kind of sound I wanted to follow and what I wanted to do that I would have had the opportunity to, if I'd have changed my sound a bit, maybe, and gone a bit more commercial, or kind of just been probably a bit more outgoing or a bit more networking. It probably just happened when I was a bit too young, a bit too naive, a bit too caught up in the kind of partying rather than the kind of like, right, to think about the business side now, be more motivated to where to take it. I was hanging out with all my mates, and it was just a bit of kind of like, right, we're going to play here, I'm going to do this and whatever. And it didn't really sink in at that time that I could have kind of rode that wave and kind of gone with it. So
I think that's what you've done there. I feel like you've stuck to what you love, and it, like, you can feel that when you're watching videos of you playing your DJ sets. And I mean, you talk about the sound that you fell in love with and that you've stayed true to throughout your career. Was there anything in particular that influenced that? I know your sound is heavily influenced by the Chicago house sound. Did you go to Chicago, or is there anything that led to that?
I've been to Chicago, but only on my honeymoon. So that was quite a time after. But going back to the sound, I think it kind of all stemmed from kind of being in Ibiza, really, because at that time when I was in Ibiza, I think it was the year after, it was the same promoters. One of the promoters was working at the Cafe Del Mar. And obviously Jose Padilla, I don't know if you've heard of him. He was the kind of sunset master of Cafe Del Mar. I mean, for me, it was incredible. And he played such eclectic music for the sunset that no one else was playing at that time. So he'd go in there, he played like Vangelis, he'd play Brian Eno in Letfield, all over the place. As soon as the sun went down, the music would change, it'd get a bit more up-tempo, but it was such an eclectic blend of different styles of music. And I kind of became friendly with him. We got to the point where on his night off on a Wednesday night, he'd kind of asked me to fill in a few times, use his records and stuff. And like 17, 18 years old, kind of incredible. So he was a big inspiration on kind of where I've taken my sound to, really. I know I came with more soulful and more Chicago and a bit more New York, but as a whole, for the kind of soulful stuff, eclectic kind of sound, really, I think he was the one person who kind of really kind of inspired to just a broader variety of sounds and music, really, to try and blend those sounds together.
That's like the ultimate opportunity, the fact that you got to play was it his own record collection that you got to play? Yeah,
because I didn't really have any stuff like that to play, you see. I mean, I used to just bug him for mixtapes all the time, so every night I'd be saying, oh, can I have tape number, whatever. And I'd know the songs because of the tapes. So, yeah.
Yeah, nice. We keep coming back to this idea of your sound, how would you actually explain your sound?
I just call it house, really.
Yeah, it's easier, isn't it? Because
Yeah.
it is.
When I first started producing, because I'm not coming from a musical background, can't really play any instruments, I was just sampling disco records or sampling old records. So inspirations for me back in the mid-90s were people like John Nick, Henry Street, Paul Johnson, kind of these Chicago producers that were doing this kind of cut-up disco sound. I know like nowadays disco edits are really popular, but for me, it kind of started from these guys doing these kind of edits or these kind of disco remixes. So, yeah, which I did that for quite a few years until I kind of got introduced to a lot of musicians, keyboard player, vocalist, stuff like that, and then started doing the more kind of song-based remixes as opposed to just the kind of cut-up sample house stuff, really.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting to hear about your sort of workflow in terms of production, and that's something that we'll come back to in a moment. Before we get on to chatting about your own production, could you tell us a little bit about how you approach organising your music when you go to a gig? Do you plan a set before? Do you totally play it by ear? I'm sure you've spoken a lot about playing physical records.
Sure.
I'm sure that's also influenced how you organise your music digitally. Yeah, please can you tell us a little bit about how you prepare for your DJ sets?
Yeah, so I always tend to kind of, if I've not played the night before, then I'll do my homework and maybe look at other DJs that have played there, kind of what's kind of sound it's kind of the night's known for and stuff. People know me for doing these kind of exclusive re-edits. So I'll maybe take an a cappella from somewhere and put it over another instrumental, or so I'll always have these kind of tracks that people know but they don't know, just to kind of stand out really from other people that are just maybe you downloading a few tracks off TrackSource or whatever, and then people always kind of remember those tracks. Oh, I remember that mix that you played of that track, but it wasn't that mix. So, but I'll always have a folder of, I call them like GA specials or edits. So I've always got a folder of those. And then I'll have a folder of like classics. I'll have a folder of like new stuff. And yeah, I think I'll just go through other folders on my record box and listen and just say, right, yeah, that might work, that might work. But I don't know, I think I like that spontaneity of kind of like, you've got 30 seconds to go on the CDJ, like what the hell am I going to play next? So I think that makes you kind of, keeps you on your toes and makes you kind of, keeps you creative.
Yeah, definitely.
So.
Do you find that you sort of put those production skills into practice when you're DJing in terms of long blends? Like, do you almost create new tracks when you're mixing?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a lot easier to do nowadays with the loop features and the effects and stuff. So definitely. I think obviously with the vinyls, it's a lot harder because they just drift out of time. Obviously, some records were not quantized like tracks are nowadays, so you've got to keep putting that work in with the vinyl. So whereas the CDJs, obviously, you can lock it in; it's kind of set, so you can do those long blends, and especially with the key mixing as well now, you can blend tracks together a lot easier. So take it on a bit of a journey, really. So yeah, I think sometimes there are those tracks that I know go well together, that I will play together. That I think, right, I played or the last gig I had, that went well together. I can check the history on the drive and say that was a good combination. We'll do that again, kind of thing. So yeah.
Sort of building it up over time, what works, what doesn't.
Yeah.
Do you get nervous before you DJ set?
All the time. Yeah.
How do you handle that?
Well, my girlfriend says I get anxious a couple of days before. She can tell my mood's kind of changed, or I don't know. I suppose the older I get, I'm getting, the more I tend to overthink things. I think now. I think when I was younger, I didn't really care. I was just kind of didn't think about it too much. It was just it was more excitement. Whereas kind of nowadays, I don't know. I think it's just old age. I think I'm get more anxious about not having enough sleep.
Yeah, it's interesting that it's that way around, because you'd think that a lot of DJs would struggle towards the start because it's so new for them and kind of going into the unknown. But I mean, it's interesting that for you, it's the other way around. Yeah. Is there anything that you do to help sort of ground yourself before you go on stage? Have you got any pre-set rituals?
Not really. I think nowadays, obviously, just tend to look after myself a lot more than I used to, really. So concentrate on my diet, keeping the gym regular, a lot of exercise, drink more water, try and get rest.
Yeah, it's all important stuff.
Just be more prepared, really. I think I'm just a lot more conscious of stuff like that, whereas back in the day it was kind of like, where's the rider?
Yeah.
And then just kind of smash it out, whereas now it's just a bit more relaxed, treating it. It's more like a job now. It seems more like a job than it was back in the days. It was kind of more like, right, okay, it's just for fun kind of thing. But yeah.
Well, alongside these club sets that you do, you've also play radio shows, and I know you've done a set in Defected Broadcasting House. How does it differ playing in front of a camera in a room with maybe a producer and nobody else, in comparison to playing live? What's the difference there for you as a DJ?
Yeah, it's tough. It's tough just with the camera.
Do you think?
Yeah. I find it a lot harder. I'd definitely for the audience. I'd definitely much rather play for the audience, because obviously you can see the reactions. You know what's working. Obviously, in front of a camera. I mean, I do like it. I do the vinyl streams at home and stuff, and I kind of enjoy them. But I find it harder to, I don't know, to be expressive kind of thing. Do you know what I mean? Whereas if I'm in a club, I've got to kind of, I'm enjoying it myself because other people are enjoying it. So I'm kind of buzzing off their excitement of them enjoying it kind of thing. Whereas you're just at the camera, then it's harder to kind of get into.
So would you say the way that you prep for broadcasts is different to how you prep for shows?
Yeah, well, more recently for my vinyl streams that I've been doing on YouTube, I've just been purely kind of off the cuff. So some of them might take a couple of takes. It might be 3 mixes in on a vinyl and it's like, oh no, I'm going to start that again. But most of the time, I'll probably get a box together of vinyls or whatever. Or if it was the Defected Broadcasting House set, I kind of knew what I was going to play for that, because it was a lot of edits that I'd done, especially because I knew that obviously people are going to be tapping them up about, or I want exclusive things to play, really. So that was a bit more kind of programmed than just an off-the-cuff vinyl set. Really.
Yeah. No, it did really well, that set. I mean, it was wicked. It was such a good set.
Thank you.
Have you got any key standout moments from your DJ career that you're like, oh, like that's really stuck with me, or that was special for whatever reason? Is there something that stands out to you?
Yeah, I think there's a couple over the years, really. One of them would be got to play with Masters at Work, who, I mean, kind of all-time heroes, really. I was buying their records when I was at school with my dinner money, so I mean, like legends. So I worked for a label in London, Bobby and Steve. It's their Groove Odyssey label.
Yeah.
Obviously, they were pioneers of the soulful house scene in the UK. They had a night down in London called Bar Rumba, which is a garage city. It was like a legendary night. So they kind of took me under their wing. They kind of liked the sound I was doing, they liked the music I was producing, and said, look, we want you to come and play and kind of be part of our brand moving forward. So they put me on warming up for Masters at Work at the O2 Arena, Proud of Two, which was amazing. But previous to that, we'd been out in the afternoon in London. My mate had this kind of roast chicken barbecue thing on, and we were late, so we had to race across London. I think I had like 2 minutes to get on the stage. So just made it in time for my set, which was quite unprofessional at the time. Were
you able to switch into professional mode, or did it take you a minute? Did it throw you a little bit?
Well, it was kind of, he looked on the CJ and said, you've got about 2 minutes, 5 seconds left on this track. So I was like, get my headphones out. But yeah, I think once I played the first track, I was all right. But I was very nervous because obviously it wasn't warming up for Masters at Work.
Yeah, huge.
Which was incredible. Yeah.
Is there anything that's happened during a DJ set, like where someone's come into the booth and tried to talk to you, or just something that's thrown you during a DJ set and you sort of like, you've got to think on your feet quickly? And
you know what, I think that happens quite often now, doesn't it? People coming up for a bit of a request or something like that, or someone barging past you. Or that's the thing with the vinyl, obviously playing the vinyl, if it's not set up right, someone's going to come and bang into the decks, which has happened a few times, and then everybody looks up like, oh, what's happening?
How do you handle those situations where people are in the booth and sort of in your workspace?
Yeah, I mean, I don't mind it if they're keeping their own space, but I don't know. You see some of these clubs in Ibiza where it's this VIP culture and everybody, too many people stood behind the booth. I mean, I don't know. I don't kind of like that really. I think people should be there to dance. A club to dance and to listen to music, not to be stood behind the DJ.
So it's been great to talk about your DJ career, and we'll obviously carry on chatting about that. But it'd be great also to chat about your music production career. So you said that you were DJing first and then you sort of got into production a little bit later.
Yeah.
At what point in your DJ career did you start producing, and why did you start producing music?
I think it was just a love of music and just wanted something out of kind of myself, really. Just was buying all this music and thinking, this is what I want to do. I want to put my own records out, but didn't know how to use any equipment. I've been on a sound recording course in Manchester. Kind of learnt the basics there of kind of recording techniques and how to use samples and stuff. And then originally there was 2 Groove Assassins. It was the Groove Assassins back in the day.
Really? I didn't know that. I didn't know that.
So it was, but only as DJ. So it was myself and my good friend Paul Wiltshire. So there was 2 of us, and we were just DJing. And we were DJing in a couple of local bars in Sheffield. We'd been DJing before that on pirate radio station, but under a different name. Now, I don't know how the name Groove Assassins came about. I think we might have stopped it or something. There was Soul Assassins that we quite liked. They were like hip hop DJs. And then we did that for, I think we were about 5 or 6 years DJing together. And then Paul went on to do other things. I went to do it on solo. And then there was another 2 Groove Assassins. So there was 3 of us.
Right.
So it was my friend Dave and my other friend Will, whose parents had a farm at the time, that we set up a studio on his farm. Now Dave, so me and Will were the DJs. Dave was kind of the computer nerd, wizard kind of guy who knew how to work everything. So we all chipped in a bit of cash and said, right, let's set this studio up. And I think we probably lasted about 3 or 4 years, put out quite a few of the early Groove Assassins records. We had releases on our own label. We had a release on Black Vinyl, Glasgow Underground, Defender Records, 4th Floor. And then I think it was from about 2002, 2003, Dave went back to working. He had another job doing computers. My friend Will, he had to go back and take over the farm for his parents and stuff. So which just left me. All I knew was music. I've been doing it since I was 15, 16. I was just going to carry on doing it. I was carried on with the DJing. Learned from sitting with Dave every day and making these tunes. I could get by and make music really, and started producing those kind of like cut up disco edits and just took it on from there really. So.
And how did it differ working in sort of a team to producing music by yourself?
Yeah, well, obviously, I mean, it was a bit of tug of war sometimes with 3 of you. So everybody's got different ideas. I mean, sometimes it was great because you need different ears on different projects, so it'd work. But yeah, I think it allowed me to kind of go in a direction that solely I wanted to go in, really, and just concentrate on the sound that I was wanting to home into. So, yeah.
Can you remember the first time you played one of your own tracks in a club?
Yeah, I think it was, well, actually, so before Groove Assassins, I was producing with another guy in Manchester. This was when I must have been 17 around this time. There was a guy called Nick Hussey, who was quite famous on the Manchester scene. He did a lot of kind of early kind of Italo piano house kind of sound. So he was living with some friends that I knew in Manchester that I used to go to school with. And I used to go and stay with his older brother, and he had all this set up in his bedroom. And he said, "Oh, you're a DJ. Do you want to make some music?" So we made this record. I think we called. I pressed 1,000 records up. We made 3 tracks and pressed 1,000 copies up. I think the record label was called Funky Monkey. It was bad. It was like piano house. It's actually worth money on Discogs now. I don't know why.
Really? What was it called?
The record was Funky Monkey Records. I can't remember the title, but it's on there.
I'll have a look. I'll have a little dig for that later.
It's on there. It's bad. But we actually got a gig from it 808 State booked us to play their club in Manchester.
Off your first track?
To perform it. Now, I can't play any keyboards.
Okay.
So he played all the keyboards. I was kind of just feeding him ideas and stuff. So I can remember going in this gig and we went backstage. They gave us a little green room and it just had a crate of Stella in there. So all his mates were in there backstage drinking these Stellas. And the guy came running in, the stage manager, saying, "You're on." Well, they just started playing the DAT and it was like 2 minutes into the track. So we had to walk on stage in the middle of the track. The keyboards are not even turned on. And there's about 500 people in front, and we've just had to stand there miming the tracks. Obviously, it's playing off a DAT tape, and it was probably the most nerve-wracking thing I've done.
It sounds like it. It sounds like your career's just been you've been thrown into the deep end in every scenario. What was the crowd's reaction to your?
Well, when I came off stage, someone said to me it was like watching the Pet Shop Boys. Like my mate was like the lively one dancing about, and I was the cardboard one stood there like. Is anybody looking at me?
I love it though. Did people? Was it received?
It was
well?
good. Yeah, it was really. Yeah, it was good. And because all my mates were there as well, it was fantastic. And because 808 State were kind of my heroes back in the time, so it was just to meet them alone and be playing at their club was something special.
Legendary.
So,
yeah.
I think I just left school, so to go back to my mates at school, saying I've just been doing this gig at 808 States Club was quite cool. So yeah,
I bet they couldn't believe it. Yeah, yeah, and it's something as well. When I asked you about playing your first track, I expected you to say something about you DJing.
No, that's probably the most memorable one to me.
Yeah. Can you remember the first time you heard another DJ playing one of your tracks and what that was like?
Not a specific moment, but yeah, it's. I mean, it's still weird when you hear it on a radio.
Yeah.
It's or you see people playing it on a video and you're like, wow, this is my track. Or my daughter's sending me a video saying, "Look, Dad, someone's playing your track now." I'm like, wow.
Cool, Dad.
Yeah.
Can you remember the first time you were played on you heard yourself, your music being played on the radio?
Yeah, I think it was like pirate radio. I think it would have been pirate radio. I don't think pirate radios exist nowadays, do they? I don't know. It was it's just an internet radio now, yeah. Before it was with the internet, so you're just tuning in on the pirate radio.
Did you know it was going to be played or was it a surprise?
No, yeah, I think it was just a surprise. It was kind of like, how did they get a copy of this kind of thing? So yeah, I can't remember who it was. It was probably just a local DJ really on. Yeah. But yeah, I didn't expect it to get played. We only pressed about 500 copies or something like that. So yeah,
wow.
It's quite cool. Yeah.
So in terms of actually creating your tracks, what tech tools do you use? Are you Ableton, Logic, Analog?
Yeah, started back in the day, I was Cubase with a lot of outboard gear, Akai samplers, MPC, various keyboards, effects machines. And then I jumped to Logic for about 4 or 5 years. And then I went back to Cubase. Then I went back to Logic and Ableton together. And now I'm just fully Ableton.
Oh, yeah, really? Yeah. What made you switch from Logic to Ableton?
I think just the speed of it, really. Just how I can, the quickness of most of my stuff, what I do are remixes, really. So just having that ability. I know you can do everything on Logic like Ableton can do now, but I think it was just because I've been using Ableton for 10, 12 years now that it's just quick and fast. And people moan the sound isn't great. It's not as good as Logic, but I don't know. I think if you're using certain mastering plugins and stuff like that, you can achieve that sound with Ableton anyway. So
how do you go from hearing a sample in, a classic disco track to reinventing that sample and putting it in a new context? How do you go about that process?
Sometimes if I hear like an a cappella that I want to use, like we said, if I have to extract it as I've not got the a cappella, I use certain software to extract it. Then what I'll do is I use a program called Mixed in Key, and it'll spit me out a key code. So then I know what key it's in. So sometimes I will go through most of my instrumental tracks or some tracks I've put through Mixed in Key, so I can see what codes are going to match with what, and then I can get the keyboard up, I can find out what chords are what, and maybe take something from there. So I'll throw the a cappella in with the beats. I know it's in D minor if it's in key 11A or whatever it is. So, and then I can probably reference some ideas of some tracks that are in the same key. I might hear a chord on someone else's track that I think, that chord would really work well with that vocal. So if I can find it myself, then I'll play it myself. If not, then I'll play it to my keyboard player Bennett. I'll say, look, I've got this idea that I've heard on this old 90s house record. I think it's going to fit with this vocal, but can we change the chord progression a bit? Or I like this bass line that I've heard on this record. And just taking inspiration and ideas. I think sometimes you need that kind of process if you're not in that creative loop of, because I'm not a keyboard player, or I can play chords, but I need those ideas really to get going with something. So I might have a sample pack that's got a couple of chords in it that I can kind of transpose and throw together. Then I'll get him in, he'll replay it. I might say, right, I've heard this bass line that I like on this record. So I think it's that kind of process of mixed in key is a really helpful tool for me. I think it does do it on Serato sample now. I think it does spit out the key. I think even Ableton probably does it now. But that's, I'd say that is one of the tools that I use a lot in production, really, just to get that idea process going.
Interesting, yeah. So mixed in key, you definitely recommend to producers.
Yeah.
Wicked. I'm interested to know, when you're talking about, I heard this bass line, I'd like to sample that, I heard this vocal, I'd like to sample that. Is that how it usually happens, where you're listening to a track and you think, oh, that would be good to sample? Or do you go looking for things to sample?
Well, I think when I started off, first of all, getting into production, as I said, it was more just cutting up disco records. So I'd either sample off vinyl, or I'd get, obviously get some like CDs. I was sampling off, I don't know, like old BBE compilations and stuff like that. Where I could find a digital copy, I'd find, because obviously the quality is better than sampling off of vinyl. And I was just taking whole loops or little loops, maybe transposing them, pitching them, time stretching them, whatever. Nowadays, I'm not sampling much. It's more played music, really. So I'm just taking an idea off, say, right, okay, I like the sound of that bass line. And I might say, oh, it's coming off a DX7 bass, but can we kind of copy that pattern but not copy it? So I'm kind of working more like that, as opposed to when I was doing more kind of disco sample stuff. I'd just be chopping whole sections of disco records and I'd span them on the keys, kind of. Obviously I've got some beats rolling around and I'm chopping different bits in and out to make a like a unique groove, as it were.
Interesting. So it's almost like a digital jam session. Just throwing things together.
And I think obviously nowadays with the mixed in key, you could splice. That's a really handy tool, so where you could splice two different disco tracks together if along the same key, or taking a vocal from a certain track, and I know it's in that same key. I know it's going to work over that track. So
yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. So what's your process when you go into the studio? You've got a blank canvas, whether that be for an edit or an original. What's your process for getting started with a track?
It's beats first. Beats first and foremost, really. So if it's an edit, if it's an edit for my DJ sets, sometimes I know that I've got an a cappella, or nowadays I'll use some software to extract a vocal off a track that I want. Say if I can't get the a cappella, then if I can use Serato sample or something like that to extract and get the vocal, as long as there's not too much artifacts on it and I can use it for an edit, then I'll chuck the a cappella into Ableton, work some beats around it, and then start with the bass line, some keys around it. I use a keyboard player, Bennett Holland, who's like classic jazz trained pianist, so he's great. So for any more complex stuff, where I'm doing more kind of song-based stuff, then I'll use him.
I like that, how you have someone that you trust and you work with in terms of, playing the instrument side of things. Yeah. In terms of, you mentioned that the importance of mixing and mastering. Do you do that yourself, or do you work with someone else when it comes to that step of the process?
No, nowadays I use, it depending on the project. If it's more of a tracky thing, then I'll probably tend to do it myself. I'll maybe get someone to master it or mix it at home. But if it's more of a full vocal project with a lot of instruments and 30 tracks of vocals, then I'll use different people. Well, I've been obviously working with our mutual friend Ollie, go up. So, he's incredible. He's got an incredible studio, so he gets an incredible sound. I've got a lot of time from him. He's a great guy. We're actually working on a collaboration together at the moment. So,
Exciting. Can you tell us anything about that, or is that?
No, yeah, well, it's relatively just fresh, really. We'd had just one day in the studio working on something. Second day in just doing a different mix of it, an alt mix. But yeah, Ollie's similar taste to me, really. Both kind of like a bit of old school house, a bit kind of bumpy stuff. So it's going to be housey.
Exciting. Yeah. Have you got a sort of release date penciled in, or
no?
Is that
too early stages at the moment. But I'm hoping it's the first of many projects, really. So yeah.
So going back to starting with your drums, I know a lot of producers will start with drums and they'll get to a point where they're like, okay, I don't know what to do next. They'll just have these drums in an Ableton or Logic project, and then they'll sit there and then they'll kind of forget about them because they just don't know how to build on it or where to go from there. Could you tell us a little bit about your process after you've laid those drums and you've got that foundation of your track? Where do you go from there?
Sure, yeah. So, I mean, most of the time, I'm not going to worry too much about the drums, as long as you've got that kind of basic structure of the swing, the sound. Most of the time, I'll go back and replace hits with different sounds, because some of the times when you're laying bass lines and keys on, the drum sounds might be a bit tonal, so you'll have to either tune them or replace them for different hits. So most of my drums will be all mapped out in MIDI. So I know that I've got the MIDI there. I can just flick through certain sounds after, say the snare's not sitting right, that hi-hat sounds it needs transposing, it needs tuning. So then I'll just flick through different banks, really, to say, right, okay, I can now use this. Now I've got the keys on there. Now the bass line is on there. Now the vocals sitting right on there. The drums, I can always tweak those at the end. So it's a process that I'm kind of like, that is probably the last thing that I'll go to. I'll always think, oh no, that's high, it's not right, or I just want to change that, or the percussion's not quite right. So I wouldn't tend to worry about the drums too much, as long as you've got that kind of canvas to get everything else on top, and then go back and tweak things, because everything's going to sound different when you've got all the other elements on the track. So it will gel together at the end. Yeah. So
what sort of elements do you tend to add in after the drums? Do you tend to go for the same element, or does it change each time? How do you build it up?
Yeah, I think I'll just get kicks, hat, snares, clap, maybe rim shot if it's a bit more swingy, garage kind of thing. Maybe some percussion, maybe a bongo loop if it's kind of more disco kind of thing. And then I'll just build around that. Tend to then lay the music on top, get the vocals. I'll bash out the arrangement, and then I'll go back to the drums. Most times, more times than often than not, I'm definitely changing the drums, just because the kick's not right or the hi-hat doesn't sit right. So yeah, it's always kind of work in progress. But I do have my kits laid out quite well in Ableton, so because I've using the same drum sounds over and over. So, or I've got projects where I've got folders, say the last remix I did, I know that I've got all those synth sounds or the plugins where I know the bass sounds from there, I know the piano sounds from there. So I know if that's worked and someone's come to me for a specific kind of, can you do a remix like that remix you did for them? I know that I can just pull up that project and it's got all those sounds that I've used on that remix. Not it's going to sound exactly the same, but it's a good starting point to say, right, okay, that Rhodes sound is off the same plugin, the bass sound's off that, so it's going to sound similar, really.
Yeah, that's fascinating to hear, sort of your process. You mentioned briefly about you quickly do the arrangement. What's your approach to arranging tracks? Do you have a template? Do you use any plugins, or do you just sort of...
No, I think, you know what, the arrangement is the hardest part of the whole process for me. It's easy to rock it around a 16-bar loop and it's jacking out and this is going to be a banger. But then to take it into a 5-minute track, 6-minute track, is sometimes is very hard. So yeah, and sometimes I'll have a template. If it's a vocal track, then I usually have like verse, chorus, kind of bridge section. Sometimes I'll put, I'll just get definitely reference tracks all the time. So always going back to references, because as you mix, you kind of mix as you go along. So just keep referencing your favorite track or the track that you want to get it to sound like. So
do you reference by ear, or you can get obviously reference plugins?
Always by ear.
Always by ear.
Always by ear. Yeah. I'm not too savvy on the reference plugins. I think I've tried to use them and they've never worked out. So yeah, but I think nowadays obviously there's the technology there to definitely do it by it's checking the A and B reference kind of thing. I think it is. Yeah.
It's good to know that you can do it with or without, though. I guess if you do it without, it can be done.
Yeah, definitely. And I think if you can get close to that reference track, then your mix is obviously you're not far away. So, but I wouldn't worry too much. People tend to worry a lot about the mix and how it sounds. And at the end of the day, it's club music, it's house music. As long as your kick's kind of there and it's got a nice warm bass and everything has got a space in the mix, then it kind of works. Some of my favourite house tracks are very raw. You can tell that there's not a lot gone into them. Sometimes less is more. So I think it's just a trial and error, really. It's just getting lucky. I find sometimes that the tracks that take the least amount of time are the best tracks, or the ones that do well. If I'm going back to a track 2-3 weeks later, going back to it again, thinking, I don't know what it needs, it could change the kick drum, change that, constantly going back to it, it's just because it's not working.
It's interesting you say that, actually, because I've heard that quite a lot, that the most successful or the tracks you're happiest with do take the least amount of time. Yeah. What do you think the main reason for that is?
I don't know. I think sometimes it's a combination of the sounds that you're using that just gel together. That maybe because of the frequencies, the tune of the drums. I just think sometimes you just hit on that rawness of it's just a groove, and that's all it needs. And I think nowadays with a CDJ, you can loop certain parts of the track. You can loop the start, you can loop the end. So really, you only need a core of about 3.5 minutes. People's attention spans now of playing a 12-minute Joe Clausel track in a club, it's not going to work for certain audiences. So I think nowadays to have that 3-4 minutes of just a groove that is a club track, that those tracks come together quite quickly. If you've got all your sounds organised and you've kind of, your drums are working with your bass, then you only need a few elements to make it work. Maybe a vocal hook, a bass line, a stabby chord, a breakdown with some effects, and it's that combination. It's that right combination, really.
So in terms of releasing tracks, you've released on some major record labels, Defected, Groove Culture, Sulfuric. How do you go about finding the right home for your releases and getting it from the finished track to out on a label?
More recently, labels have been coming to me for remixes, really. So they'll send me a track and say, or a group of tracks and say, we're looking on a remix on this. Do you like it? Would you consider doing it? Kind of thing. Always kind of look and see who else is doing a remix. Can I make it any better than the original, or do a different take on it? Because some tracks it's be sacrilege if you're going to do a remix on it anyway, because you're not going to get a better version. Sometimes if I'm doing something myself, then I'll kind of home in on a certain specific sound that the label has got. So like we're at Groove Culture, I know their sound is a bit more kind of uplifting, slightly more commercial, disco-y. So I'll tend to make my drums more suited to what they're doing, not as swingy, not as, kind of, it's that kind of specific sound what they have, really. So I think for anyone starting off is target certain labels, certain sounds, really. I'd say that's the best thing to do to get your name out there and push your name is specifically target labels that you want to release your music on, or that you like the sound of other people's music on. So you want to get a record on Defected, or you want to get a record on Sulfuric, then do your homework on their sound, look what they're putting out at the moment, and and specifically go for that kind of sound, really.
Interesting. That's really good advice. Yeah. Really good advice. So on that topic, that leads us on nicely to something which I'm sure you get asked about quite a lot. You did an incredible edit of the Visions track Heaven, called Hallelujah in Heaven, which came out on Defected, and it was one of the biggest club tracks in 2023 when it came out, and you still hear it all the time in clubs. How did that one come about, and did you know it was going to be a special one when you were doing that rework?
Well, I was such a fan of the original, but as you probably know, the original is quite a slow disco kind of version. But I can't really play that sound in my sets, or at least I've got a peak time gig. So I just thought, you know what, I love the vocal, but how can I take it to my audience kind of thing and play it at my gigs? So I'd extracted the a cappella, because there was no a cappella about at the time.
It's clean, you wouldn't know.
No,
it sounds really clean.
Well, the later version I got, obviously they gave me the a cappella, but the original version, the edit I did, you could still hear some of the horns in the background, which kind of added it to it. So I'd got the instrumental track is an old Kerry Chandler track remixed by Supernova, some guys from Italy. So I knew that it worked quite well, because I'd done this kind of, I was messing about on the CDJs and I'm mashing the a cappella over the top of the beats and stuff, and I thought this could fit quite well. So took both of the tracks into Ableton. I'd cut parts out of the instrumental, welded the a cappella around it, put a bit of a breakdown in, added some effects and filters, some extra beats. And it was just specifically for me to play out in my sets, really. I wasn't going to give it to anyone else. I thought, you know what, I just want to keep it for my sets, because if I give it to someone else, then people are going to be like, oh, I want a copy, can I have a copy? Oh, he's got a copy, why can't I have a copy? So I can remember playing it in London somewhere, and it was my friend Neil Pearce from Deep Into Soul. I produced under Remy Music. He was saying, oh, we really want a copy, give me a copy, I want to play at Southport weekend, blah, blah, blah. I was like, oh, shall I give him a copy? So anyway, I gave him a copy, and he played it there, and I think Melvo obviously heard it, and he was like, can I have a copy? And then next minute he played it on his show, then Sam wanted a copy. And then it got to the stage where they were playing it in all the sets in Croatia, and people were asking for it. Is it coming out? Obviously, the licensing was quite tricky, because they owned the rights for their vocal, for the Vision, because obviously Ben West Beach and Con, but they didn't own the instrumental track that I'd used, which was on King Street Records. It was a Kerry Chandler record, but the remix was by Supernova. So they had to speak to Heather at King Street at the time, and they managed to clear it. So and then it got an official release, which was incredible. So
yeah, what a journey! It's mad that the plan wasn't to release it originally.
No,
and then...
yeah, but inevitably it came out, which was great, because obviously it brought my name to a wider audience, being on Defected, and obviously doing the set at the Broadcasting House, and then subsequently kind of led on to me doing other remixes for Defected labels. I have released other remixes on Defected 10, 15 years ago. I did a couple of remixes for them. Did an Afterlife remix. I think I did a God Made Me Funky, Mike Dunn. I don't know if you remember that one.
Yeah, of course, yeah. Yeah, I don't think I've heard that remix. I'll have to listen to that. Yeah.
That was more of an edit as well. Simon approached me and said, because I've been doing these edits for years, you see. And he said, I just want you to do a kind of an edit version of the original. So it's just a case of beefing up the drums a bit, and adding more breakdowns and stuff, really. So it is quite close to the original, but hopefully it's got kind of Groove Assassin stamp on there a little bit.
I love that. Yeah. What about, you've just had a new release come out recently on Dave Lee's label, a remix that you've done.
That's right. Yeah.
Could you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, so Dave got in touch and said I'd like to do a remix on one of the tracks he had. So original it's a disco track. So it was a disco track. So he'd approached me and said, I want you to do kind of a Groove Assassin kind of remix, but could you also do a re-edit of his disco version? So I kind of tried to do that, but it kind of wasn't working. So in the end, I ended up just doing kind of the main mix, but then I thought, well, I feel a bit bad that I've not done this kind of disco edit that you want me to do, so I'll try out like a dub mix. So I did this more stripped out dub mix. It was more like a, you know what, it was kind of a bit of an ode to Kerry Chandler, really. It was just kind of like a 3-note bass with some stabby organ chords and stuff. Yeah, both of them did it really well. I think that was #1 in the garage chart. I think the other one was, I got a top 10 track source. It's been great. I've seen a video of Kerry Chandler playing the dub version himself. So,
I saw that, yeah. Yeah. No, the track's
Fantastic.
great. I love the track. I feel like it's a little bit different from a lot of the remixes that you tend to put out, because like you say, it's got that sort of disco sound as well, which is
That's right.
really cool to hear.
Yeah.
How does it feel? You mentioned about, you know, all these big names supporting your music. How does it feel, you know, seeing the likes of Sam Divine and Horse Meat Disco and Kerry Chandler, Kenny Dope? How does that feel, seeing these other big names playing your music?
Yeah, it's just inspiring, really. I think it just inspires you to get back in the studio and keep doing it. So it's I'm obviously doing something right. Obviously, sometimes kind of self-doubt kicks in and you think, does it sound right? Is it right? Should I have changed this? Should I have done that? But then obviously when you're getting these guys playing it, people like that, obviously recognised DJs and artists, then it makes it all worthwhile. So it's just inspiring to get on to the next project, really.
Absolutely, yeah. So, it takes you out of that creative bubble, and seeing people who appreciate your work as well is incredible. And there's going to be a lot of producers that are starting out and they'll really look up to you and everything you've achieved in your music production and DJ career. What's one piece of advice that you give to people starting out on their production journey? Because sometimes it can feel a little bit daunting, not knowing where to start, or, you know, how trying to find your own sound as a producer. What advice would you give to those starting out?
I think if I could go back and kind of start again, I think I'd definitely say I'd learn an instrument. If I could play keyboards, I mean, that'd just save me so much time. And not that I don't like having Bennett there, because he's incredible. I'd have to learn for years to be as good as he is. But I think obviously just to have that ground in reading music, knowing chords, knowing melodies, kind of that knowledge, really. And just immerse yourself in as much knowledge as possible. I think nowadays you've got the YouTube videos and stuff like that, which are really helpful. So back when I was starting, there was nothing like that. It was just kind of computer magazine or magazines and stuff, which I can read it till I'm blue and it still doesn't sink in. So, but whereas I can watch a video of someone doing a tutorial, and it kind of sinks in a bit more. So I'd say, anything that you can do like that, and just like we said, like home in on a certain sound, kind of have a direction of where you want to go, where you want to be in 5 years' time. I mean, obviously your sound's going to change over the time, because probably your taste is going to change as you grow older. But if you have that kind of clear vision, that direction of where you want to go, and just kind of focus on that, just learn as much as you can.
So you talked a little bit about your home studio, which looks incredible. I've seen clips on Instagram of your home studio with, you know, your decks, and you've got a proper, like, really, really cool setup. How did that come about in terms of having your own studio at home?
Well, I've kind of always had a little bit of a setup in home, either in a spare bedroom, basement, cellar kind of thing. I only moved to where we are living now. So I used to live in Sheffield, and I moved with my partner. Now we live in Buxton in the Peak District. We have this old Victorian house. Eventually I'm going to get around to doing a studio in the basement, in the cellar. But at the moment it's just a damp cellar. So I've commandeered like a first floor spare room, as it were, really. And just kind of soundproofed it a little bit. I don't know if you've seen, I put the paneling around, and it's almost like it's a bit of a 70s teak man cave with this kind of 70s throwback furniture. And I don't have any more. I don't have these CDJs anymore. I got rid of those. So I just thought, I just want to focus on going back through my vinyl collection, and still buying quite a lot of vinyl.
Interesting.
So I'm just kind of, when I get a chance, I'm focusing on just to kind of almost cataloguing these vinyl streams, really, just to go through and get to play these old vinyls that I've not played for years, and just to get them out to people that would have not heard them before, really. I think there's almost like this craze now on Instagram, where there's people going through the collections and playing it to people and saying, oh, this is such and such record, it came out whenever and whatever, which is great for the kids that are kind of learning. I mean, when I was digging for disco records and stuff, then there was no YouTube, or very limited kind of YouTube and stuff. So I think to have resources like that nowadays for people to say, right, okay, we can follow this guy and he's going to share all his vinyl collection over time with us.
100%. No, I'm a big fan of that as well, because I think in the music industry there can often be some gatekeeping around tracks. So it's great when DJs actually do share the music in the tracks. That leads us on nicely, actually, because your content game is really strong on Instagram. You know, you've got lots of different types of content. Well, in your home studio, you've got live sets, you know, everything that you could hope for, I guess, in terms of content that you're putting out. What's your approach to social media? Is it something that just happens organically, or do you have a plan?
Sporadic, I think is the word. No, my partner says I'm really bad at it, so I should be doing more of it. So
really?
I'm not really that savvy with stuff like that. I mean, it's just kind of, if I've got a gig or if I've done a stream or something like that. I mean, you tend to get badgered now by promoters. Can you do a video about the gig? Can you promote the gig? Which I didn't totally get, kind of thing. You've got to do that because no one's going to know about it or whatever. But I don't know. I think where I'm coming from and the scene, how it used to be, kind of not used to that. I'm getting more used to it as the years kind of go on. But I think now you've got to be much the all-rounder. So you've obviously got to be this social media guru. You've you're looking after your own bookings. You've got to do your own artwork. You've got to do, it's everything. Whereas before you didn't really have to worry about that. You're just getting booked to be a DJ. I think there's a lot more pressure now, really. But if you're not on social media, then no one knows about you. So
how was that to adapt to? Obviously, when you're starting out, if social media wasn't really a thing that you relied on for your DJ career, whereas now some people probably couldn't imagine a world without relying on social media to get gigs and things. How did you find that sort of like adapting to the change in the scene, really, in a digital age?
It's tough, really. I think, just have to, I don't know, just look how other people are doing it, really. Look how these youngsters are dealing with it and doing it. I mean, most people, probably these guys have other people doing it for it, but I've had a bit of help from my daughter saying, Dad, don't post this, don't do it like this, I'll set it up for you.
Got a social media manager at home. That's great. Cool. What about the side that we don't necessarily see on social media? What's something that is a big part of your career that you don't necessarily see online?
I think, as we touched on earlier, I think now just a lot more conscious of health, really. Obviously, not getting any younger, so I think just can't go out and do those. Definitely cut back on doing gigs, cut back on being away from the family for too long, spending more time at home, having certain weekends for free, getting out in the outdoors, staying focused. Obviously, I think before it was just kind of 2 or 3 gigs on a weekend, traveling, get that kind of drinking, late nights. I just can't handle that anymore. I think it's, if I do have a late night, then it's more like it's a 3-day recovery process, really. So now just a lot more focused on fitness, health, diet, which in hand just helps me be a lot more focused, really. I tend to deal with things a lot better than before. It was just, everything was a bit chaotic, in and out the studio, not as focused, probably putting out too much music, not concentrating on just one project at a time. I think, it's just everything just spiraling and just trying to keep it going.
Yeah, it's important to look after yourself.
Yeah.
What would you say is the hardest part of working in the music industry?
I think as a DJ, I think the late nights. Yeah, I'd say that. And I mean, over the years, I've traveled quite a lot. Not in the past few years, I've not traveled, but I think the traveling is a big part of it. I mean, looking at these guys that, I don't know, like Sam Divine, Malvo, and Louis Vega. I mean, probably one of the hardest working guys in music. I mean, he's not a young guy, but his work rate is incredible, admirable. He's all over the world doing things, doesn't seem to stop, interviews. He's in the studio making music. He's got a live band, he's DJ gigs. I just wouldn't be able to keep that going, really.
It must really take its toll.
Oh, yeah.
What about the things that you like to do outside of music? What do you do to sort of reset and...
Yeah, so I love going out walking. Lucky enough to live in the Peak District, so it's just on his doorstep. Mountain biking, and yeah, we have a bit of we call it the Ramblers group. It's just kind of a collective of friends, and we plan these trips out once in a while where we'll go and stay like a 2-night stay, and we'll go somewhere like Snowdon, Scarfield Pike. We'll go and do a walk, and yeah, just spending time with friends and family, really.
Yeah, in nature first.
Yeah.
I'm curious to know, what do you think you'd be doing if you didn't work in music? What job do you think you'd do?
Well, I always wanted to be a footballer, but I was never good enough. Yeah.
Gosh, do you still keep up that hobby
no,
now?
I've not played football for years. I used to play a bit of five-a-side a few years gone, but no, but yeah, I'm mad keen football. But that's all I wanted to do as a kid, was just be a footballer.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah.
Cool. So looking ahead to the future, what sort of things can we look out for or get excited for in terms of any releases, projects coming up over the next few months?
Yeah, so I've got a remix coming out. I think it drops this Friday on TrackSource. And it's a remix for Sterling Blue Music, which is run by Albert Sterling Menendez, he was the keyboard musician who played on a lot of the earlier Masters at Work stuff, and now he is the touring keyboard player for Shakira. But he's always been at the forefront of house music. So it's a remix for him featuring Mr. V from Soul Channel Music. This is part 2. Part 1, I think, featured mixes by Josh Milan, Mr. V himself, Sterling Mendez. Part 2, I think, is myself, Manu, a couple of the mixes. So that drops on Friday. Then I've got a remix dropping 27th of June for Groove Culture.
Cool.
I think the song is called Remedy. So it's quite a nice vocal from, I think the singer's from Italy. Various other projects. Next, I've got the festival I've got coming up in August for Soul Session.
In Portugal?
In Portugal, that's the one. Yeah. Oh, no, so not Portugal. It's in Malta.
In Malta?
Malta.
Sorry.
No, I think I probably told you it was in Portugal.
Yeah, Malta, that's exciting.
But it's in Malta, yeah.
Yeah, so what's that going to look like?
Yeah, so I think it's a 4-day festival taking place from the 14th to the 16th of August. I think got boat parties, day parties, night parties. It's their first festival in Malta, so but they have quite a big following in London. They do parties, I think monthly. They have parties at Ministry and places like that. So the lineup's incredible. We've got it's more like an Afro house sound, but obviously an house as well. So got At Jazz, who's obviously one of my favourite producers, DJs. Manu, Hyena, Soul Dynamic, big lineup. Really good lineup of DJs, so I'm really looking forward to that.
Exciting things to come. It sounds like it sounds like it's going to be a busy summer for you. Yeah, cool. So this next part of the podcast, we like to play a game of this or that, which is 20 quick fire questions. Some are music related, some are totally random, but we're going to try get through them as quickly as we can. So whichever comes to your head first.
Yeah.
Cool. So number 1, festivals or nightclubs?
Nightclubs.
Digital or vinyl?
Vinyl.
Ableton or Logic?
Ableton.
Analog synths or digital plugins?
Analog synths.
Night owl or early bird?
Early bird.
Studio time or playing live?
Studio time.
Coffee or tea?
Coffee.
Techno or drum and bass?
Oh, techno.
Summer or winter?
Summer.
Solo sets or back-to-back sets?
Back to back.
City or countryside?
Countryside.
Collaboration or remix?
Remix.
Lollipop headphone or standard headphones?
We used to be lollipop headphone, but now standard headphones. I think I'm losing my hearing, so I need, in certain environments, I need the two.
Interesting.
Yeah, I think the lollipop doesn't cut it on festivals, because the system's so big.
Yeah.
And you sometimes get that kind of the sound coming from the stage back. So I've learnt now that I have to have the cans in certain
Before we
environments.
carry on, I'm interested to know what's the appeal of the lollipop headphone, because it looks quite difficult to use. What's sort of like the pros of using them?
You know what? I think it is just you've got that other ear free all the time, so you can kind of rest it against there. You're not constantly having to move off. So I definitely prefer in a home setting or in a club that has decent monitors, then definitely the lollipop. But for a festival or a big event, you need the cans.
They look really cool, the lollipop
Yeah.
ones. So. Love it. Cool. Pre-party or after party?
Used to be after party, definitely pre-party.
Goes back to the sleep thing.
Yeah.
Beach party or warehouse rave?
Beach party.
Instagram or TikTok?
Instagram.
Cats or dogs?
Dogs.
Muddy rainy festival or dusty sunny festival?
Dusty sunny festival.
Rotary mixer or a fader mixer?
Rotary.
Sweet or savoury for your post-gig snack?
Savoury.
Love it. Smashed it. Cool. That was really... I feel like you can tell a lot about a person through quick fire questions. That's really interesting. Amazing. So the final question that we like to ask our guests, which you actually have kind of answered, but I'm going to ask you again just in case you've got any other pointers, is we like to ask our guests if you could go back to the start of your career and have a chat with yourself when you were just starting out, when you were 16, 17, what piece of advice would you give to yourself?
Well, definitely the instrument. Learn the instrument for sure. The keyboard, yeah, that would be 100%. And I think just network as much as you can with as many people as you can. I think just take every opportunity that comes your way, because I think I regret a few things that I should have chased, opportunities that I should have chased up, or people that I should have spoken to. Obviously the scene's changed quite a lot now. And it's quite easy to get in touch with people online, whereas before it was a bit more face-to-face. But yeah, I think support the people that you're trying to go after, if you know what I mean. So go to those if you want to get a Defected gig or you want to get a record. Go to those gigs, speak to those people that are doing those things, that are pressing those buttons. And just persistence, I think, is the key. So many people at it now. You've got to try and stand out, be a bit different from everybody else, and take a few risks if you're DJing. Play tracks that other people wouldn't necessarily play, because if not, you're not going to stand out. So I think it's good to be different. Yeah.
That's fantastic advice. Thank you so much. It's been amazing to chat to you today. Thank you for joining us on the podcast. If people have listened today and they're like, this guy is so cool and want to follow your journey, whereabouts can people find you on social media? So
Instagram.grooveassassin, I do have a website. It's not been updated for a while, so I'm going to update it in the next couple of weeks when I get around to it. It's been a bit busy few weeks, so grooveassassin.com has a few mixes on there. And various links. So if you go to grooveassassin.com, you can get to all my socials from there.
Amazing. Yeah. Well, thank you again, Nick. It's been a pleasure to have you.
Thank you, Grace. It's been great. It's been a pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you for listening to this week's episode of Beyond the Booth with me, your host, Grace Garcia. If you enjoyed this episode, please feel free to check us out on social media at We Are Academy 94 and stay tuned for next week's episode. I'll see you there.